Please be seated. We come to item 3 on the agenda for session 11, consent agenda reports and remaindered business. We return to remaindered business from the Faith Action Programme Leadership Team, Presbytery and Partnership Support Group Programme. Do the team want to come?
Moderator, I believe we have a point of order.
Oh, sorry, a point of order, Alec Shuttleworth. Sorry, I didn't notice that there.
Thank you, Moderator. Shuttleworth 238. Moderator, I stand to be corrected, but I don't think there was a report we heard this morning which wasn't amended by the convener of the committee making the report itself. Some of these were simply late additions of names. Some of them seem to be more complicated. Some, I'm sure, were nodded through without most of us having the foggiest idea of what we were doing. I wonder if we might appeal that if these amendments do have to come in this fashion, that some brief, almost executive summary of the effect of them is given to us before the detail of the point of the amendment is put on the screen, so that we at least, because going back and forward in technology takes time for those of us for whom moving at snail's pace is somewhat of a danger. Yeah. So I wonder if we might get some more guidance on these points of order, especially when they come from the committee, than we are getting.
Okay. Thank you so much for your comment. I think it was a comment more than a point of order, and I'm presuming to speak on behalf of someone around me when I say your comment has been heard, and over the coming months, thought will be given to how amendments in the name of the committee and the timing of those being brought and any explanation that is needing to be made. They'll have a reflection on that before next year's assembly. So I hope that assurance comforts you, and we'll do something before next year. Thank you. So we're at the Presbytery and Partnership Support Group Programme. Vice Convener, are you speaking to us? Thank you.
Thank you, Moderator. Jonathan Fleming, number 114, Convener of Presbytery Partnership Support and Vice Convener of Faith Action Programme Leadership Team. Moderator, I wish to speak briefly to 2 acts which come before us and to situate them within the wider work that continues across the Church at this time. In relation first to the Capability Act, a fundamental building block for continuing ministerial development, it is our hope that Commissioners will recognise that its underlying purpose is not punitive, but above all, pastoral and restorative. As the Act itself makes clear, its principal objective is to support ministers who are perhaps struggling with certain areas of ministry within the proposed capability framework, enabling improvement through time, training, and appropriate support. It is a framework grounded in fairness, natural justice, and care, recognising both the responsibilities of ministry and the humanity of those who exercise it, whilst providing greater clarity for all. In that context, it is fitting to recall the words of St. Irenaeus, who wrote that the glory of God is a human being fully alive. That vision lies close to the heart of this legislation. It reminds us that our concern is not simply with structures or processes, but with people, with enabling ministers to flourish in their calling and thereby enabling the Church more fully to reflect the glory of God. Alongside this, the Ill Health and Income Protection Act brings clarity and consistency to situations of prolonged ill health. It establishes clear processes, ensures appropriate medical assessment, and places a strong emphasis on pastoral support being offered jointly by presbyteries and the Faith Action Programme Leadership Team throughout periods of absence. It also provides security to ministers through income protection arrangements, recognising both the dignity of the minister and the realities faced by congregations in such periods of uncertainty. Taken together, these acts represent a maturing of our shared life, a willingness to address difficult situations honestly while seeking always to act with care, justice, and compassion. But, moderator, this work does not stand in isolation. It sits within the continuing implementation of presbytery mission plans across the church. That work is ongoing, and we in the planning and pastoral support group remain committed to supporting presbyteries as they carry it forward. It's important to say clearly that there have been many positive elements in this process. Across the church, we have seen congregations embracing change with courage and imagination, and in many cases, beginning not only to adapt, but to thrive. There are places where new energy has emerged, where mission has been renewed, and where hope is tangible. At the same time, having worked closely with the General Trustees throughout the mission planning process, we must acknowledge that this journey has not been without cost. For some, the adjustments required have been painful and difficult. Buildings long loved have been let go. Patterns of ministry have changed. Communities have had to reimagine themselves, and none of this should be minimized by this assembly or the church. Yet even here, there are signs of grace. In many instances, the release of resources, particularly through the sale of buildings, has enabled new initiatives to be envisioned and in time realised. Opportunities have emerged that might not otherwise have been possible, and for these we give thanks. We also recognise the vitally important support offered through the Housing and Loan Fund, whose contributions towards ministers' retirement removal costs have eased transitions at a significant moment in ministry. So, moderator, as we consider these acts, we do so not simply as pieces of legislation, but as part of the wider story of growth of which we have been hearing. A church seeking to be faithful in changing times. A church learning how to care well for its ministers. And a church trusting that even through challenge and change, God is at work bringing new life. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, convener. We come to questions. Can I ask if you have registered a question or a comment at some point during this section of our agenda and it's getting near your time, can you make your way to microphones just to help us keep moving along? We've got a question from Brian Kerr and then a question from Stuart Fulton. Brian. You're doing this deliberately now.
I heard your call and shifted back. Moderator Kerr 118. Can the Vice-Convener give any comment on how the programme group and FAPOT will work to ensure that, should they be passed, the Capability Act, the Ill Health Act, and our other processes like complaints and discipline processes will work in a cohesive and supportive way to those in ministry, and ensure that the application of those acts wouldn't be used or applied inappropriately?
Thank you for the question and for advance notice of the question. Moderator, what we envisage is a three-pronged fork in the road. There will continue to be situations where those in our family of ministries will face issues. Sometimes capability issues that can be resolved in time with additional support and mentoring, using the capability framework as a helpful developmental tool. We welcome Mr. Kerr's helpful suggestion in his proposed amendment of a self-referral element as a way of reaching out for developmental or practical support at the earliest opportunity. There may be times of illness, short or long term, where we will seek to offer as much support as we possibly can, not only to those in our family of ministries, but in times of ill health, but our congregations at such an uncertain time. Regrettably, there are also situations where further action needs to be taken, at which the Discipline Act may be regarded as the most appropriate course of action. In order that these acts may be understood and prepared for use, work has already begun as to what things may look like should these acts pass. This work so far has been undertaken between FAPLT, the Law Department, the Principal Clerk's Office and HR, including the creation of profiles for
Excuse me,
those that will...
Convener. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We had a drop of audio online during Mr Kerr's question, and the online commissioners didn't hear the question. Do we know at what point the audio came back on?
It came on for the Vice Convener's reply.
Right. So if you can put your finger on the spot where you were, and you're going to start there again, and Brian, with even more brevity than usual, is going to give us the highlight of your question.
Yes, the highlight of the question is how will the committee work to ensure that if they're passed, the Capability Act, the Ill Health Act, and if necessary, the Discipline Act and complaints process will work in a cohesive and supportive way to those in ministry and ensure that application isn't used or applied inappropriately.
Thank you for repeating that question, and we apologise to online commissioners for that drop in communication. We hope you're up to speed now. Convener.
Thank you, Moderator. So there's been work undertaken between these different these groups, including the creation of profiles for not only those involved in the capability process, but also profiles for supervisors of those training within our family ministries in order that everyone can work in an integrated manner across the board. As always, we shall endeavour to do our best within the offices and Faith Action, and we look forward to engaging with, we hope, the Clerks Forum and with the Presbytery Review Committee as we strive to recognise the importance of context and also the need for consistency. And all this whilst recognising the boundaries and parameters of confidentiality. Moderator, 13 years on from when first requested, the opportunity to introduce a capability framework and Capability Act is here. And we humbly seek the consent of the Assembly to let them come into being. Should they pass today, we fully understand that there will be a need to monitor and develop the Act and framework as it is put into motion, learning from our presbyteries and our supervisors every step of the way, and bringing changes as we identify issues along the way, whilst developing, we hope, if agreed, a self-referral system should Mr Kerr's amendment be agreed, and how these tools may be adjusted for the eldership, as Mr Snedden's amendment was suggesting. We humbly seek an opportunity to be trusted to listen and to learn through the introduction of this Act, alongside, we hope, our amended Ill Health and Income Protection Act, in order that this three-pronged fork in the road can finally become part of the journey ahead. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Convener. Mr Fulton.
Stuart Fulton,
Stuart.
195. I remembered I'm getting into the way of things. Moderator, could I ask the Vice Convener two questions that related very strongly to each other? The first is, are the committee sure, positive, convinced that what they're proposing to this Assembly is the best possible practice in their research, both within other churches and within industry? And does it reflect best pastoral practice as reflected in other denominations that they're aware of? The second question, because it's equally as important, because if the first question is in the positive, I'll be overjoyed. Second question is, are those whose job it will be to implement the Act, if it is in effect accepted by this Assembly, will these people receive appropriate training so that this excellent Act can be implemented in a way that reflects a deep pastoral theology, an understanding of the individual, and a deep understanding of what it's like to have incredible ill health and still be passionately associated and moved by the job which you've been doing? And I have to say that I have been ill myself, and therefore I have to sort of, what's the word?
Declare an interest.
Declare interest. Yes. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Convener?
Please. Thank you, Stuart, for the question. Without trying to treat them as close questions, the answer, in short, for both of them would be yes. We do feel that this is the best after a lot of work and research that's gone into the creation of the Acts. And yes, we do commit to working with presbyteries as this is being implemented, so that we can, like anything that's created new, to be able to take it out and to learn where the faults are, where the fault lines are, to identify where things need to be worked on as we go along, and to continue to make it best practice, and to make sure that appropriate training support is offered every step of the way. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. I see no request to speak at present. Are the Assembly happy to move to the sections of deliverance? Before we start in on section 20, there are a number of new sections and some amendments which have been submitted in advance and the committee are willing to accept. When we get to those, if the Assembly is happy, the mover of the new section or the amendment will be invited to read that. We'll confirm that the committee are happy to accept, and then I would hope we could move to vote on that without further comment or discussion. Does that sound okay to the Assembly? Thank you. So we're at section 20 in the print. Is that approved? And online. We come to a new section 1 in the name of Alan Hamilton. Can we have the new section on the screen? And Alan, if you read it for us.
Thank you, Moderator. It flows from and complements section 20. Give thanks for the sustained and resilient witness of Christians across the Middle East in the face of disadvantage and persecution, and urge the whole Church to stand in solidarity with them. I believe it's acceptable.
I understand the committee are happy to accept this. Yes. Is the Assembly happy to approve this new 21? And online. Thank you. We have another new 21.
Yes.
Yes, Julia.
Yeah. May I say a few words?
Name and number.
Julia Pizzuto Pamaco, 314. If I may just say a few words when I read this out to explain it, I would appreciate
Very
that.
briefly.
Okay. Instruct FAPL to establish a focus group to understand and learn from the lessons of those who have entered ministry in the Church of Scotland from a country outside of the UK, and to bring a report to General Assembly 2027, including any recommendations on further practical steps that may be taken to offer support to our colleagues in ministry. I won't say all I've written. All I want to say is there are many stories. We've heard some of them on the floor of Assembly, including stories of racism, including stories of struggles with visas, bereavement, many things. And we don't have a very good process for supporting these people, myself included, but the many, which I would say, I'm going to take a guess, 20% of our Church of Scotland ministers? I don't know, throwing out that number. But they stand beside us. They've given up a lot to be here. They're standing in the gap. Where would we be if they were not willing to be serving here? So I would ask you to support this amendment and this new section. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I understand the committee are happy to accept this. Can we see it on the screen? We've had it read for us. Does the Assembly approve this new section 21? Thank you, Julia, for raising that for us. We have another new section 21 in the name of Mike Goss. There you are, Mike. So if you could read it for us.
Thank you, Moderator. Mike Goss, number 263. Insert a new section 21 as follows. Instruct the Faith Action Programme leadership team and the Assembly trustees to provide a rationale for a sufficient level of national stipend levels as the baseline to be adjusted using the appropriate measure of inflation each year, and report to the General Assembly of 2027.
Right, thank you.
Can I say just a couple of sentences?
If it is a couple of sentences.
I'm always brief, Moderator.
Sometimes brief.
In 2009, we had quite a good stipend. If it had kept up with inflation since then, it would now be worth £53,000 per annum. That tells you how far the stipend has fallen since then. How far down does it go? I think I want to hear what the Fappelt and Assembly trustees believe to be sufficient, and then to use that as the regular baseline for inflation increases in the future. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you. The committee are happy to accept the new section as in the print.
We can't speak on behalf of the Assembly trustees, although we do understand that they are also happy to work with this. But we also want to make the Assembly aware that this is somewhat of a challenging area because of the conflict of interest. So just if we can make that very clear from the very beginning, in terms of we're very happy to look at this piece of work, but it'll have to be dealt with sensitively. Thank you.
I think I would want also to say that all that I understand is being asked for here is a report to next year's General Assembly, not any changes to levels of payment. All we're asking for is information. With that understanding, can we see this new 21 on the screen? Is the Assembly approve this new section 21? And I saw that, and I'm assuming that's an error in somewhere between it's got from Mike to the screen, but it means 21. Is that okay? Yes? Yes. Thank you. We turn to 21 in the print. Is that approved? Sorry, I see a question.
McLennan 221.
Neil, yes.
I've trimmed what I'm going to say already, so you don't need to ask me to do that. Examining bias in nominating committees, I welcome the steps towards introducing training on conscious and unconscious bias in nominating committees. This is at parish church level, I think. This is indeed a real issue. If you're sitting here today thinking, I have no bias, I'm a fair-minded person, then can I gently introduce to you, it's called unconscious bias for a reason. We all have it, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, but we do need to recognise it for what it is and engage with positive strategies to mitigate its effects. The report mentions many various clerks, interim moderators, committees and so on, where they investigated the current practices in place throughout the Kirk. In section 42.1.2, it is regrettable that, and I quote, there was insufficient time or evidence at this stage to determine responsibly what mandatory measures would be appropriate. However, can I encourage the group to look beyond our own walls for examples of good measures in discernment and election procedures? In my day job, I encounter the assemblies, synods, courts and other governing bodies of other denominations in Scotland. One such is the Scottish Episcopal Church, and I declare an interest that they are a current client of ours. On 2 occasions over several years now, I have been present at electoral synods for the election of a diocesan bishop. Whilst I'm bound to confidentiality on the candidate element of these synods, I'd like to comment that in advance of the process beginning and the advertisement of the vacancy, they hold a full day's preparatory session for the electoral synod members, the equivalent of a nominating committee, just a lot bigger. Included in the preparatory day are full sessions from a professional consultant on conscious and unconscious bias. All this is to say that engaging with our ecumenical friends might offer us some shortcuts and quick learning in taking this important piece of work forwards. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you for your comment. I'm sure the committee have heard that. We have a question from Lewis Reddick. Okay.
Reddick 155. On the same subject as the previous speaker, in terms of anti-bias training, I'm conscious even the prophet Samuel needed some anti-bias training from the Lord. When he was stood before all the sons of Jesse lined up there, the Lord had to tell him, do not consider their appearance or their height. At 5'4", that's a verse that's always been very close to my heart. But anyway, but I'm also conscious that he didn't sit down and draw up a list of objective criteria to assess him against. I think if he did, I doubt the teenage shepherd boy would have got the nod over all the sort of battle-hardened older siblings in terms of choosing a king. Ultimately, David was chosen because Samuel listened to the voice of the Lord. So my question for the committee is, how can we come up with a system that deals with the very real problem of unconscious bias, which can be dressed up in religious or spiritual language, but at the same time give priority to the voice of the Spirit and the call of the Lord throughout all this process?
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for the question and for advance notice of the question. To begin with, I would say that the report does not attempt to judge individual decisions. Rather, it draws attention to places where unexamined assumptions, including direct or indirect discrimination and unconscious bias, can shape how we discern whether a call is genuine. Its purpose is to promote greater self-awareness so that individuals and teams can reflect on the influences that may be clouding their judgment, not to second-guess outcomes. It could be said that calling may sometimes favour the unlikely person, as we heard with David, but it will still stand up to honest scrutiny and fairness and consistent reasoning. Bias usually becomes visible when our reasons are inconsistent or based more on familiarity and comfort, rather than, in the case of ministry, the missional and pastoral needs of the charge. To help people hear God's call when bias is making discernment difficult, the report encourages practical reflective steps. Pause and name any assumptions as part of the discernment process rather than any concrete steps to displace what is currently done. Strengthening existing training and linking nominating committees with existing training on unconscious bias and anti-discrimination can help create space to notice and correct bias so the community is better able to recognise and respond to an authentic call. Thank you again for the question.
Thank you, Convener. We move to number 21 in the print. Is that approved? And online. And online. Now, when we come to number 22, is that two amendments? In the name of Jonathan Fleming. Can we deal with the amendments first? Jonathan, could you read for us the first amendment and could we see it on the screen, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Moderator. I'll read it first of all. This is a new section, and this is an amendment to section 22. Amend section 22 by adding at the end, subject to amending the appendix to the Act as follows. A, in paragraph 7.10, changing paragraph 8.9 to paragraph 7.9, and in paragraph 8.6, changing paragraph 9.5 to paragraph 8.5. Simple explanation to this, Moderator, is that in the creation of this, we got a bit mixed up with the numbers, and we're just seeking to rectify that.
Okay. So obviously the committee are willing to accept this amendment. Is the Assembly willing to accept this amendment?
Thank you.
Thank you. And online. And we have a second amendment. Please read the amendment for us.
Yes. So this is amending section 22. Now, I'll explain at the end again. Amend section 22 by adding at the end, subject to amending the appendix to the Act as follows. Deleting the existing paragraph 9.3 and substituting the following. 9.3. The appointed person should give reasonable notice of the date of the hearing. The minister should also be given information about the alleged incapability, including copies of any documents which will be produced at the hearing, details of the membership of the committee, details of any witnesses which the appointed person intends to call, and an invitation to the minister to call relevant witnesses at the hearing, provided that advance notice is given. The reason for this, Moderator, is that somewhere between 121 George Street and the printers, this piece fell off the paperwork. And this is in order to make it, to bring it to the awareness of the General Assembly. And we can only apologise that the technical gremlins got the best of us.
So clearly the committee are happy to accept this amendment. Can we see it on the screen again? Is the Assembly happy to accept this amendment to section 22? And online, thank you. And then we go to 22 in the print, or is that a counter motion to 22? Right. It's just gone again. I saw a question there a minute ago from Barbara, who's online. Barbara, if you can hear me, please ask your question now.
Thank you. Can you hear me, more importantly?
Name and number.
Barbara Soranek, Sites 87. I thank the convener for the exhaustive answer to my initial question, and I would like to say that I do think ministers should be accountable for their work, and their work should meet certain standards. My question refers mainly to the capability framework brought to the General Assembly last year that you mentioned under Section 43, I think, of your report. Given the severe consequences it can have for ministers, can the convener assure this General Assembly that any procedures initiated under the proposed Act will be based on measurable and evidence-based facts? And will the committee continue to scrutinise and, where necessary, revise the wording of any underpinning document, such as the capability framework, to ensure that this is the case, and of course bring this to a future General Assembly? Despite the assurances you gave, which I greatly appreciate, I still believe that some of the wording, both of the Act and the framework, is vulnerable to misunderstandings and indeed misuse, however unintentional. And I know that some commissioners share that concern. That is the background of my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Convener, can you respond to the question?
Barbara, thank you very much for the question and for advance notice once again. We can assure the General Assembly that any procedure initiated under the proposed Act must be grounded in evidence-based and demonstrable concerns relating to ministerial practice and performance. The Act itself requires that concerns be investigated, evidenced, documented, reviewed over time, and considered in accordance with the principles of natural justice. We recognise that because the consequences of the procedure may ultimately include severance of a pastoral tie, capability concerns must be capable of being evidenced in observable and measurable ways. In practice, this means that decisions should be based not on subjective judgments about a minister's spirituality or personality or interfaith, but on identifiable patterns of conduct, leadership, pastoral practice, administration, relationship, safeguarding, communication, or fulfilment of agreed responsibilities over a sustained period of time. In terms of revision of wording, etc., we would very much hope that we could work with presbyteries to implement and to work with presbyteries to hear the experiences of how the legislation is being put into practice. And it's our intention that these pieces of work would be regularly finessed and would, if required, come back to future assemblies for their consideration of any amendments required. Thank you for the question, Barbara.
Thank you. Now, moving forward, we have a counter motion to Section 22 in the name of Grant Barclay. And there are a number of folks indicated they want to speak on that. But there is an amendment to the counter motion, is that correct? In the name of John Ferguson. So I think it might be best if we hear from Grant moving the counter motion, and then we hear John's amendment to the counter motion, and we could deal with the amendment and then return to any remaining comments or questions about the counter motion. Is that okay? So, Grant.
Grant Barclay, 137. Thank you, Moderator. I bring this counter motion.
Grant, can we see it on the screen and read it out for us?
Yes, of course. Welcome the development of the capability procedure to date and invite FAPLT to bring a revised Act to the Assembly of 2027. Moderator, I do appreciate the work which has been done, and I do support, as a Presbytery Clerk, steps which help ministers continue to work well. But, in my view, there are some significant issues with the terms of this Act and with the associated appendix which are serious enough for me to invite FAPLT to revise this legislation and bring fresh proposals for approval. And I hope the Assembly might concur. I point to three things in particular, and I shall be brief. The first is that definitions are unclear. I'm not sure what capability is. Is it the refusal to perform all the activities in the 4 documents referred to in Section 3.4 of the Act, or is it substandard performance of particular ones among these, and, if it is the latter, who judges? Second, throughout the Act, insufficiently specific standards are required. For example, the word should appears in the Act more than 30 times. It's unclear what that word means in different places. The Act reads to me more like a chapter in an HR manual, and that is fine, but it is not adequate for an Act of the Assembly. For example, in section 11.1, there is quoted a recommendation from ACAS, apparently as an example, but it might in fact be an instruction. And I don't think that's how law should be written. And finally, and perhaps of most concern, is that we do need, as we have already seen, to consider two documents simultaneously and to understand detailed amendments with little time to do so. We need to read the Blue Book, and we also need to see the rather complex amendment which was recently moved and which was contained only the other day in the daily papers. That's because there was an unnoticed problem with copy and paste, and I fully appreciate that, but I also understand that the Assembly should be given the opportunity to scrutinise legislation carefully. Now, while the Act reads as though it might be more at home in an HR manual, it has to be an Act. That's because of the severity of the sanctions, and that's because if this Act is passed, it will be one of only a handful of Acts of Assembly where the tenure of a minister may be ended with corresponding loss of stipend, accommodation and possibly a family home. This is serious stuff, and high-stakes consequences require high-quality legislation. I do have sympathy with the overall intention of this, but I do not think that the draft as it stands quite hits the mark. And therefore, I do wonder if returning to next year's Assembly with a revised version might not be wise. And just to save time, Moderator, I think I am very likely to support the amendment, given it comes from a colleague, Presbytery Clerk, because I might, if I had thought more about it, have included that initially. But that's all I have to say, and I move the counter motion.
Thank you. Before we move to the amendment, is the counter motion seconded? Seconded, that's grand. Now, John, where are you, John, till we hear about your amendment? Oh, you're online.
Thank you, Moderator. I just want to clarify that I very much support Dr. Barclay's counter motion. Oh, sorry. John Ferguson, 259. I very much support Dr. Barclay's counter motion, and also I'm very much in favour of the capability legislation as well. But I do have a concern, Moderator, about consultation in general in the Church at the moment. There has been a lot of consultation in regard to the new financial structure for ministries through new directions. There was very limited consultation with clerks on the Ill Health Act on just one particular aspect that was undertaken just a few days before the deadline when it was due to go to print. But there's been no consultation I'm aware of regarding the Capability Act, certainly not with clerks and with presbyteries. And I think we've seen, Moderator, what happens in regard to the situation with the vacancy allowance when the church is not properly consulted, when presbyteries are not properly consulted, and when people don't really fully appreciate what it is they're voting for. And so I share Dr. Barclay's concerns about aspects of this legislation, and I feel strongly that we need to go back to the church. We need to consult fully. We've waited 13 years for this legislation. I think we need to wait another year. We absolutely have to get it right. And the idea that we approve an act with the kind of understanding that, yes, we can keep developing it as it goes along is fine up to a point, but not to any great extent. We have to be able to approve this knowing that the legislation is going to work properly. And so, Moderator, I would support Dr. Barclay's counter motion and hope that the Assembly will also approve my amendment.
Thank you, John. Can I ask that the amendment be put on the screen? I'll read that for us. It says, amend the proposed counter motion to section 22 by adding at the end, having ensured that consultation and engagement with presbyteries is first undertaken. Dr. Barclay, you indicated you were happy to accept that? Yes. Is the General Assembly happy to accept that amendment to the counter motion? And online. At some point, might we be able to get a slide with the amended counter motion prepared so that when we come to vote, because clearly we're going to have an electronic vote on this matter. I've got comment from Fiona Crawford, and then Sarah Ross, and then Stuart Love. I do understand, the Assembly understands this is a really important piece of business, but if we can be quite focused in our comments, we really would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Moderator.
Fiona
Crawford, 192, and I wish to speak in favour of this counter motion. I'm going to try and keep this curtailed because I support very much what Dr Barclay and what Dr Ferguson have already said. I really just want to reiterate what Dr Ferguson said online, that this is not the kind of act that we can feel our way forward on. We have to make sure that we get it right because of the implications of where this could lead to. And I would really implore that the Assembly gives us one more year to be able to engage with the committee and for the committee to engage with us. I feel that if we don't do this, our three-pronged fork in the road could lead us all in separate directions, or worse, stab us all in the foot.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very clear. Sarah Ross. Sarah.
Moderator, thank you. Sarah Ross, 208, and as I should have said earlier, an Assembly trustee. However, I speak wholly as a parish minister and one who has spoken previously on the need for this procedure. I understand the concerns, and I know my opinion here will not necessarily be popular, but I feel it has to be said. I don't want to wait another year for a procedure that we naturally do not want. And I am concerned that we will find a reason next year to push it back again. The report mentions 2013 as the beginning of this, and it is now still, believe it or not, 2026. Naturally, we don't want it. Church of Scotland Resilience report about ministers say that we score highly for naivety. We expect people to be nice, kind, diligent, etc. because we are. Yet, moderators, we do have colleagues that we struggle with. And I'll leave it at that point. We do not exit training with all the necessary skills, no matter how wonderful the training programme. As Robbie Hamilton said, we need to learn, and Marjorie McLean said parish ministry is complicated and now specialised. In almost all areas of work, there is some kind of appraisal or accountability. We demand theological degrees at the beginning, but abandon ministers to their own devices afterwards. The competency framework that is referenced is fairly robust, and the capability procedure follows our practice pattern of exploring issues and dealing with concerns and outcomes. Yes, we may have to make adjustments as real-life examples occur. However, let's start and not push it back another year. It is something to enhance and grow the church, to help ministers find balance, permission to admit challenges, and opportunities to grow and develop. Who might we lose in the coming year because we put this off? But more than that, congregations and sessions need help to deal with ministers who sadly are not able to fulfil their calling. We have Ascend, ministry development conversations and more, study leave and opportunities to serve nationally, which, trust me, are learning curves. However, those who need the capability procedure are generally those who don't access this support. Therefore, Presbyterian sessions need this route to help encourage, instruct, very few, I'm sure, into growing skills and competencies, or yes, perhaps take other steps as needed. Anecdotal evidence shows training is not equal, cultural differences are overlooked, and there are those who need this. Previously, quinquennials asked ministers what they were doing. Local church reviews did not include them, and Kirk session-led action plans do not check up on ministers. Therefore, I ask that we resist the counter motion and improve ministry for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Stuart.
Stuart Love, 147. Thank you, Moderator. I have the privilege of serving as the convener of Ministries Committee in the Presbytery of Glasgow, which gives me a unique opportunity to support my friends and colleagues in ministry during some of the most difficult times that they face. And almost universally, they are concerned about both the competency framework and elements of the Ill Health Act, as it is proposed to be passed, because it seems to envisage processes that would better fit employees with all of the support structures that an employee might expect. But of course, we're reminded often we're not employees as ministers, we're office holders. Indeed, such concern was the reason why in 2024 the Presbytery of Glasgow decided to bring an overture to the General Assembly, but were encouraged to withdraw that overture on the reassurance that our concerns about support would be addressed. Unfortunately, these two pieces of legislation seem to fall short of the concerns that the Presbytery raised. I speak wholeheartedly in favour of the counter-motion because of the high stakes involved here. There are not many professions where a loss of employment means automatic homelessness. So surely it is better that we take the time to get legislation right rather than pass it with the promise that we can tweak it along the way. So I support this counter-motion and would urge that we take the time to get our legislation right for the sake of our ministers. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. There are no other requests to speak. I'm proposing to give Dr. Barclay an opportunity to respond to the debate and then the convener.
Grant Barclay, 137. Very quickly, Moderator. The reason I'm insisting on this is because I agree entirely with Sarah. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't have capability. The issue will be that if we don't have an act that we can actually implement, we'll learn nothing from it, because either we'll be unable to implement it as presbyteries and presbytery clerks, or we'll be mired in appeals for years to come. And that's my reason, not any other, in seeking for some revision for next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Convener.
Moderator, allow me to begin with addressing some of the questions that were raised in Dr. Barclay's first areas of concern. In section 3.3 of the Capability Act, this is in effect a definition of capability. It states that capability is demonstrated by the execution of the duties of parish ministry in an individual context to an acceptable minimum standard over a sustained period of time. This is assessed by using the three documents that are referred to in section 3.4, and it is judged by the appointed person and the Capability Committee, as all set out in great detail in the Act. Should, the word should, means that this should happen. It is used because assessment of capability is such a context-specific exercise that imposing an inflexible mandatory process is not helpful. It basically means that this is expected, that something should happen. So if it doesn't happen, there would have to be a reason for that. It's a standard of conduct which indicates good practice. And this is something that I am to believe that the Procurator, if was required, could confirm as well. On top of that, all I can say is it is right that it is this General Assembly who are being asked to pass these pieces of legislation in its time-honoured tradition within our polity of being the policy-setting body of the Church. After which it is for presbyteries to implement, and we commit to working with presbyteries to hear their experiences of how the legislation is being put into practice. And as I said earlier, it is our intention that these pieces of work would be regularly finessed, because we will not know how things will work out until this Act is actually out there in the open and situations arising for us to build the case studies. And if required, we will bring to future assemblies for their consideration any amendments that are required. We want to journey with everybody on this, not to operate in silos, but to work together as servants of the Church for the betterment of the Church. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you, Convener. Can we see the amended counter motion on the screen, please? There we are. It reads, welcome the development of the capability procedure to date and invite FAPOT to bring a revised Act to the General Assembly of 2027, having ensured that consultation and engagement with presbyteries is first undertaken. I'm proposing that we move to a vote on this, and I'll ask the Vice-Convener to tell us all how we're going to vote.
Thank you, Moderator. This is not a for and against. You are either voting in favour of the motion or in favour of the counter motion. On the hub, can I first of all suggest you do refresh your screens? The voting buttons will tell you which button is for the motion and which is for the counter motion. In the hall, button 1 is for the motion, button 2 is for the counter motion. So the vote is now open.
She's just open.
The vote is now closed.
Can I take this moment while the Vice-Convener is getting the numbers just to clarify what's going to happen next? What we're doing just now is voting either for the motion or for the counter motion. One of those two will prevail in that vote. That then becomes the section of deliverance which we still have to approve after this vote. Okay? So once the result's announced, whatever survives gets voted on again. That's our order of working through counter motions. And I thought it might be helpful just to make sure that was clear for us all. They're voted for the motion, 47. They're voted for the counter motion, 135. The counter motion carries. And so now, in replace of section 22 in the print, we have the counter motion as section 22. Is that approved?
Online.
And online. We come to section 23 in the print, and I'm waiting for the screen to catch up. Where are we on 23? Is there a new 23? Right, so Brian Kerr. So the new 23 is in the name of Brian Kerr. Brian, can you read the new 23 for us?
Kerr 118, certainly, Moderator. It's to insert a new section to instruct the Faith Action Programme leadership team to continue to develop the capability procedure for parish ministers, whether through changes to a 2026 Act or as an Act to be brought to the Assembly of 2027 for approval, including a mechanism for self-referral and report to the General Assembly of 2027. Follows on.
Brian, I understand the committee are willing to accept this. If you're okay with that, and if the Assembly doesn't feel we need to hear any more, we could move to hear the amendment on this new 23. Who's the amendment from? George Snedden. George.
Moderator George Snedden, M316. Do you want me to just read the amendment?
Read the amendment, please.
Amend the proposed new section 23 in the name of Reverend Brian Kerr, by adding after self-referral the words and considering the possibility of introducing a capability procedure for those in eldership and other offices of the local church.
Oh, what's the point of order, Mike?
Michael Goss, number 263. I think that's a whole new motion, not an amendment.
Okay. While the clerk's side of the table are considering that, I hope you'll appreciate, I'm going to look to Brian and ask, he's indicating that's acceptable to him, and the committee are indicating that's acceptable to them. What do the clerks think about Mike's point? Principal Clerk.
The matters in the new section 23 if amended, would be matters under consideration and any proposals would come thereafter. So we hear what Mike says. I'm sure that the committee at the table have heard likewise. We believe it to be competent, and that was our advice previously.
Thank you for the point of order, Mike. That helps us clarify what we're doing when we're moving through these things. So we've got a new section 23, which has been amended. Is there any possibility we can see the new 23 with the amendment? Is that it there? Amend the proposed new section 23. Oh no, that's the amendment. Oh, sorry. David Ingalls has a question. David. That'll give us, David's question will give us time to get that slide together.
David Ingalls, 289, declared an interest as a general trustee. But my question relates to how do you plan to do this with elders? This is not likely to be fair, as you can't make an elder homeless, you can't fire him. So how on earth do you manage it in the same equitable manner? I know that elders should have capabilities, but I don't think this is the right way of dealing with it. Thank you.
I see it does have eldership. I see it does have eldership in George's amendment. All of a sudden, we've got a number of comments here. Please can we make these as pointed and as direct to the point as possible? So Robert Kenneth and then Monica Redmond.
Robert Kenneth, 485. As an elder and a treasurer of a church, if this went through, I would be very, very definitely considering my commitment to the church. I'm sorry, but as an elder, giving up my time and my talents to the benefit of the church is what I do, and I do that to the best of my abilities, the best of my capabilities.
Thank you.
I very strongly object to this amendment.
Thank you. I've been advised, and I think it's good advice from the Principal Clerk, the General Assembly has not yet voted on whether or not to accept this amendment. Might it be the mind of the Assembly that we vote whether or not the amendment in the name of Mr Snedden is acceptable, even though it's been accepted by Mr Kerr and the committee? Is that what you were advising me? And that would be an electronic vote. So can we see simply the amendment in the name of Mr Snedden, and we're going to have to vote for or against, sorry, the Vice-Convener will tell us what we're going to vote.
So this is a for or against vote. For Mr Snedden's amendment or against it. On the hub, you will have the usual for and against buttons. In the hall, button 1 is for the amendment, button 2 is against the amendment. Just at this minute, my technology lets me down. Righto, I'm ready now. So the vote is now open. The vote is now closed.
There voted for the amendment 33. There voted against the amendment 153. The amendment falls. So we return to the original amendment in the name of Mr. Kerr. Yeah? A new section. It wasn't an amendment, it's a new section. And that was accepted by the... right. Eventually we won't have time for important comments.
I do appreciate it, Moderator. I just wish to, on behalf of FAPOLT, reiterate our appreciation of all of our elders in the Church of Scotland and the invaluable service that they offer to the Church. And just wanted to make clear that was our stance here and now. Thank you.
Please, could I speak?
Very quickly.
I've been a transition and interim minister for 10 years. And over that 10 years, I've had many Kirk sessions. And some of those Kirk sessions have been toxic. There's been some elders and board members who've been very difficult and held back congregations. 98% of all elders are wonderful. But what do we do with the 2% who hold congregations back and put ministers in illness? How many ministers at the moment are off ill sick with stress? I don't believe we should have the same capability study, but I do believe there has to be guidelines, and I appeal to the General Assembly to use Place for Hope. For Place for Hope shows us how to lead meetings with creative tension and conflict. So I appeal to the General Assembly and to FAPOLT to use Place for Hope, to go into these places where there are difficulties and help the congregation and the Kirk session work through it.
Thank you for your comment. Can we see new section 23 on the screen as a question? Craig Dobney.
Craig Dobney, 257. I have many strengths as a parish minister, but church law, sadly, is not one of them. So, without being too glacial, this Act seems very innovative, if that's the right word. And it also relates to discipline. Should it not come through the Barrier Act?
Right. I don't think this new section 23 is passing an act at this point.
Okay.
I think that it's asking for work to be done. Is that correct? Yes. So your question might be relevant next year, but I'm not sure it's right for today.
Yeah, I was just
Would that be
trying to say-
correct, Principal Clark? Not my problem. Can we move to...
I was just going to say, Moderator, that I concur with you in both aspects of what you've just said.
What a team. What a team. New section 23, if we could see it on the screen, that this has been accepted by the committee. Is this accepted by the General Assembly? And online. And online. And so we are moving to 23 in the print, and there are 1, 2, 3 amendments. I'm trusting you to tell me what order I'm taking them in. The first one is Bryce Calder. What's the second one? 2 in the name of Jonathan Fleming. Bryce.
Moderator, would you like me, Calder 190, would you like me to read out the amendment that I'm proposing?
Can you start again? Name and number.
Calder 190, if you can hear me.
Yes.
Would you like me to read out the amendment?
Yes.
Sorry, Moderator.
Yes,
can
please.
You hear me?
Please read out your amendment.
Yeah, I'm not opposing the Ill Health Act, as a lot of work has been done on it, and thank you to the committee. I'm seeking to amend only one section of it, which is section 9 of the Act, which concerns ministers' ongoing sick pay. And my amendment would read, amend section 23 by adding at the end, subject to amending section 9 of the Act to provide that a minister's stipend shall be paid at full rate for the duration of their period of ill health absence from work, as is currently the case under the Income Protection and Ill Health Act 2011 and then updated 2019 for a maximum of 12 or 15 months as applicable. The specific amendments to the Act are as follows. In section 9(1)(a), by deleting the words full rate for 6 months, half rate for the next 6 months, and 1/3 for a further 3 months, if applicable, and substituting full rate for 12 months or 15 months as applicable. In section 9(2), by deleting the words full rate for 6 months, half rate for the next 6 months, and 1/3 rate for the further 3 months, and substituting full rate for 15 months. And lastly, in section 9(4), by deleting the words full rate for 6 months, half rate for 6 months, and 1/3 rate for 3 months, and substituting full rate for 15 months. And I thank the clerks for help in drafting this amendment. Would you like me to speak to it, moderator?
Give me 1 minute. Are the committee? No. Please speak, Bryce, to this amendment.
Thank you. I've been a minister moderator for 31.5 years. And at the heart of my amendment is pastoral care. Pastoral care for parish ministers of the Church of Scotland and man's families during some of the most vulnerable and worrying times in their lives. I speak as someone who has been on long-term sick leave, unfortunately. From March 23 to March 24, I was incapacitated by a severe flare-up of an autoimmune disease. I was really very ill. My own doctors indicated I would continue to be so until the right drug could be found to help treat me. Knowing this, I asked the pastoral care team at 121 if I could have a Church of Scotland occupational health assessment, and this was arranged, thankfully. I saw a doctor and psychologist from HealthLink 360 in May 24, and their conclusion was that my health was poor and I would be off work for many months. And I was off work for many months, justifiably, for a whole year. After several drug treatments failed to help, it wasn't until October 24 I received the first infusion of the biological immunotherapy medicine that has helped to calm the illness. During my year off work, the full sick pay element of the current Income Support and Ill Health Act allowed me to convalesce safely and to start to recover with financial peace of mind. The new Ill Health and Income Protection Support Act before us today is seeking to reduce parish ministers' sick pay to 50% after 6 months and 30% after 12 months. That would have caused me and my family a great struggle. The committee sent a consultation paper on the proposed changes to all parish ministers in autumn 25. Sadly, this consultation paper and its results are not before the General Assembly to read today. What I can reveal to Assembly, though, is that the consultation paper argued that reducing ministers' sick pay would simply bring us into line with other Church of Scotland staff and ministers from other denominations. On the surface, this seems reasonable, logical even. It was and is, in fact, though, a logical fallacy, a false analogy. As I completed the consultation paper, why, I wondered, propose parity in sick pay when the Church of Scotland staff and clergy in other denominations have significant rights that are not offered to Church of Scotland parish ministers. Other staff in the Church of Scotland, for example, have the status of employees with contracts which include working hours. They have access to fair treatment under the Employment Rights Act and the Equality Act. As a Church of Scotland minister, I would love such a contract and employment status. I don't have them because parish ministers are considered office bearers and not employees. As a parish minister, I'm also required by church law to live in a manse. while staff in other posts can buy and live in the security of their own homes. At my age, I would love to be able to live in my own home. Let's look to other denominations. Take, for example, the context of the Church of England and the Methodist Church, who provide ill health retirement, a dignified end to ministry for clergy who are too unwell and unable to continue working. And they can do this because they offer their ministers a final salary pension. The Church of Scotland closed, as we heard this morning, such pensions in 2013, and in doing so ended the possibility of ill health retirement within our church, replacing it instead with income support, which requires chronically ill parish ministers, when they cannot return to work, to continue to get regular GP fit notes right up until their retirement age. Where is the dignity and care in that? I would love to know that if the time came for me that I had to go on income support, that I would have the same ill health retirement support instead, given as a basic right to some of my colleagues in other denominations. But putting aside the committee's consultation paper, which had false analogies within it, the argument for change to parish minister sick pay laid before us today is twofold. Firstly, we're told it will save the Church of Scotland money. It will, but by taking money from vulnerable ministers in need, ministers like me and countless others who have made many sacrifices and made them very gladly for the Church of Scotland, and more importantly, for the growth of God's kingdom here in our nation. I would humbly ask Assembly to encourage the Church of Scotland to keep the current sick pay arrangements as they are, and to continue to make sacrifices for parish ministers at crucial times when they need care and support the most. And secondly and lastly...
Bryce, the bell's gone.
Yes.
We don't have time for secondly and lastly anymore. The bell's gone.
Burkett said, this may apply to some, but not to many. And I would simply ask Assembly...
I think the bell's gone. I'm sorry. I hope Bryce can hear me. I think we need to move on. Is the amendment is not being accepted by the committee? Is that correct? No. Is the amendment seconded? Seconded. Okay. I have requests to speak. I have 3 on the screen, and I hope that's all that we would want to hear on this matter. So we've got Karen Gillan, then Brian Kerr, then Stuart Love. Please be brief. Karen.
Moderator Karen Gillan, 217. I declare an interest as a member of church staff, and oh how I wish the army chaplains were here as I don my flak jacket and enter this particular debate. Can I thank Bryce for his contribution and for the personal situation that he outlined. I understand that the decision to reduce someone's wages after a certain period of illness is not an easy one, and I fully appreciate that, and for many, these discussions are causing a level of distress. However, these discussions take place all this time with staff within our church locally and nationally, and also with parishioners in their own work situations all over the country. I appreciate that Bryce has argued that ministers are not employees and so should not be subject to similar standards. However, I think in this specific area, by treating ministers so differently from others who work for the church in so many ways, shows a very real lack of self-awareness. The situation that Bryce outlined is not an easy one. I myself underwent major heart surgery in 2017 and had to spend a considerable length of time in hospital. That was of strain to my family financially. The long-term illness like that Bryce outlined could just have easily have been faced by an MDS worker supporting the ministry in a parish. It could have been faced by our church cleaner or our church secretary. It could have been faced by a presbytery buildings officer. It could have been faced by countless members of staff at the National Office, Or perhaps most importantly, it could have been faced by one of the many staff we rightly celebrated yesterday who work for Crossreach, our social care provider. In each of these situations, these folk will have no more than 6 months full pay and 6 months half pay. So already what is being proposed in the report for ministers is more generous than what is available to others we employ nationally and locally. However, all of the people I have outlined face an additional pressure. If they go on to half pay, their family home is dependent on their ability to be able to pay their mortgage or their rent. And that's a considerable pressure that they face, that ministers would not face at that point. It's also the case that a number of people sitting in our pews who contribute financially to the church week in, week out, may be in jobs where statutory sick pay is all that they receive, and long-term illness and the pressure that is brought to bear on them can become almost unbearable. There have rightly been a number of calls at this General Assembly for the Church to work to make the world a more just and fair place. This proposal by FAPLT, where sick pay for ministers is brought into line with the other employees of the Church, is an example of justice and fairness. If we support this counter-motion, which would ensure that minister is paid full stipend for 18 months with no reduction in pay, what are we saying to those staff who I outlined at the beginning? What are we saying to the person in our pew who gets £493 a month by virtue of getting statutory sick pay for only 28 weeks, and for whom the stress will be unbearable? I would rather, as an Assembly, we spent our time speaking up for them and campaigning for justice for them and for fairness for them, rather than pleading a special case for minister. There's a quote I learned 40 years ago, studying O-grade English, that I would be appropriate if we passed this counter-motion. It's from George Orwell's Animal Farm. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Let's not go down that road, and let's get this passed and pass the motion in the name of the committee.
Thank you, Karen. Brian, your question? Okay, point of order.
McDougall 174. This is an emotive subject and people are not being fair. There's comments being made around us, and I think that we all need to remember that we're all about love. And if people please remember that as they speak, and I'm talking about the whispers, not what people are saying at the microphone.
Thank you for raising that point. When someone's speaking, it's our responsibility as commissioners to attend to what they're saying and not be commenting as has been suggested is inappropriate. Thank you for raising that. Brian, your question.
Yeah, Moderator, a question and a brief comment.
Let's go with the question.
Well, it relates to, firstly, is this affordable by the church? And
right, well, that's enough. I'm not what...
There's a procedural point. If it's not, and if FAPO are unable to bring their next amendment, which is about the change of trigger dates for unrelated illnesses, then actually the passing of this may actually put that in jeopardy, which actually changes the whole tenor of the Act, and there are unintended consequences, I think, in this one, and I would just like to hear from the convener what those are and if this is actually affordable.
Convener.
Thank you for the question. Given the amount of stipend that would be payable through Mr Calder's proposed amendment, we would not be in a position to proceed any further with our proposed amendment as far as resetting the timescales in the event of an unrelated illness. This would be deeply regrettable, as it was the product of many pastoral conversations with concerned commissioners over the weekend who welcomed these proposals. But we simply could not afford to offer it with the potential of 24 or 30 months of full stipend at stake in the event of a reset. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you for that. I'm going to take one more comment. Stuart.
Stuart Love 147. I think Bryce Calder has articulated very eloquently the kinds of concerns that I've been hearing as convener of the Ministries Committee. Simply to say we've heard a plea for there to be parity between the employees and ministers of our church will in that case give us the rights and protections of employees through contracts. Either ministers are employees or we are office holders, in which case the legislation has to be framed with that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. I understand the Solicitor of the Church is going to give us some advice.
Yes, thank you, Moderator. I think it is maybe worth pointing out, since a number of speakers now have raised this, and I wouldn't like the Assembly to be under any misapprehension. The suggestion has been made that ministers, because they are office holders, are somehow in a worse off position than employees. The opposite is in fact the case. Employees have a whole panoply of statutory rights. They also have a large number of duties and obligations to an employer. The Church has been at pains over many years to replicate the rights of employees for office bearers, so that these are all replicated and they're all there in the Minister's Handbook. But the corollary has never been put in place, in that there are very few obligations and duties placed on parish ministers, and their terms of office holding are in general considerably more favourable than they would be were they on employment contracts.
Thank you. Are we ready to move to vote on the amendment? Yes, the Principal Clerk says we are. Can we see the amendment on the screen? We could have it on 2 slides, which would make the print just a bit bigger. Thank you for that. There we go. We'll give folks just a moment or two to look at that. Move on to the second slide, please. To advise the Assembly while you're looking at the amendment, the advice from the table is that Bryce should be given the right to reply to this debate very shortly, and then the convener to close the debate, and then we'll vote on the amendment. Yep. Someone will help. Right, the mic up here. There, it's on now.
Thank you. Moderator, Yvonne Grant, 286. I'm not accustomed to being paid for anything that I do within the work of this, the church as a whole. And I appreciate that my minister does, or anybody else of that qualified level. Any minister who is off sick, do they get paid the full 15 months at the stipend, or are they already being cut down to,
right.
to what?
What's the present situation?
Thank you very much for the question. The answer to that is, at present, under the 2019 Ill Health and Income Protection Act, ministers are currently paid 18 months full stipend. That's the provision that's available at the moment. What is being proposed under the proposed 2026 Ill Health Act is that this would reduce to 6 months full pay, 6 months half pay, and 3 months at a third, with the discretion to extend that third in exceptional circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. Bryce, can you hear me?
Moderator, thank you. Calder 190,
So
can you hear me?
Yes, briefly to reply to the debate.
Yeah, the very last bit that I didn't get to say, Moderator, was that this is about encouraging ministers back to work, it says, but it would encourage some, but maybe it wouldn't work for others. I know of ministers who are on long-term hospital waiting lists, and I also know that in the case of myself, I just simply could not return back to work. I did not have enough money to take the pay cut, and I and other ministers in my situation would simply ask for the church to consider treating us with pastoral care and financial help at some of the most vulnerable times in our lives.
Thank you. Convener.
Thank you, Moderator. And thank you to Bryce for engaging with us so meaningfully over the weekend. Moderator, while we rightly approach ministers experiencing prolonged ill health with compassion, generosity and pastoral sensitivity, we must also recognise our responsibilities to congregations, to presbyteries and the wider church. The legislation before us seeks to balance those responsibilities fairly and sustainably. The current arrangements, as you heard earlier when Yvonne asked, are already exceptionally generous. A minister may receive full stipend for up to 18 months, provision which exceeds that found in most charitable, ecclesiastical and public sector settings. The proposals before us still provide substantial support, 6 months on full, 6 months on half stipend and a further 3 months on 1/3 stipend, with a discretion to extend that in exceptional circumstances. This is not about diminishing pastoral care, but about creating a clearer and more sustainable framework. We also recognise the particular complexity created by man's situations, tied housing, as some people also know it as. Ministers will continue to be able to remain in the manse for a significant period, including after demission or severance where appropriate, and in some cases, further housing support may be available for those who qualify through the Housing and Loan Fund, should ill health be prolonged. Importantly, many long-term absences arise through stress, anxiety, or depression. Occupational health guidance consistently shows that prolonged absence without structure or support can make return to ministry more difficult. Earlier intervention, appropriate support, reasonable adjustments and clarity around process can therefore benefit both ministers and congregations alike. At present, lengthy absences can leave congregations without settled leadership for extended periods, while placing considerable strain on presbyteries and colleagues who must provide locum cover and services as interim moderators. And that uncertainty does not serve ministers, congregations or the wider church well. We must also acknowledge the financial realities facing the church. In a time of constrained resources, careful stewardship is essential. As we know, we have as a church undergone recently a prioritisation exercise, resulting in the loss of many much-loved members of staff through redundancy. And as a result, that's been part of the need, one of the needs we've had to address in the life of the church through our budgeting. These proposals continue to offer generous support while ensuring arrangements remain sustainable. And importantly, the Act retains discretion to respond compassionately in exceptional cases, as I said earlier, where continued support is justified. Moderator, we understand the concerns behind the amendment, but we believe the proposals before us represent a compassionate, responsible and sustainable balance between care for ministers, fairness to congregations and stewardship of the church's resources. We therefore respectfully invite the Assembly to support the deliverance as proposed and to resist the amendment in the name of Mr Calder. Thank you, Moderator.
Right. I understand that there were folks who asked to speak. We're dealing with this amendment and just this amendment. Right. I'm sorry. Either you have to go to a microphone or the advice I have is that we've closed the debate. And the convener.
Moderator, we have closed the debates. While the names come up on the screen, I would remind Commissioners it's entirely within your disposal as to who is called upon.
Right. So we're going to move to a vote on the amendment, and the Vice-Convener is going to tell us how we're going to vote.
So this is a for or against, for the amendment or against the amendment. So on the hub, you will have the for and against voting buttons. In the hall, button 1 is for and button 2 is against. And so the vote is now open. The vote is now closed.
The vote is for the amendment 33, against the amendment 69. The amendment falls. Before we proceed, the Assembly will note that the numbers voting in the most recent vote are significantly lower than earlier votes this afternoon. And this has been observed at the table here as a matter of some concern. We are also concerned that we've been going for an hour and 35 minutes and we haven't yet completed 4 sections of this remainder business. And we have other business to do in this session of the Assembly before the closing session begins in now 55 minutes. We simply don't have time to carry on at the pace we've been going. But somehow we're going to have to pick up the pace as we work through the rest of this section of the FAPOT report. We have another 2 amendments to 23. as quickly as possible, can you introduce these amendments?
Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Thank you, Moderator. We have a new section for 23.
Can we see it on the screen, please, as well, as Jonathan's reading it?
Gold star to the tech team. So, amend section 23 by adding at the end, subject to amending the Act by inserting a new section 8C as follows. 8C, unrelated illness and reset of absence periods. 1. Notwithstanding any provisions of this Act where a minister returns to work following a period of absence and subsequently becomes absent due to a health condition which is clinically unrelated to the previous condition, the provisions of this section shall apply. 2. If the subsequent absence begins within the 24-month rolling period referred to in section 8B, any calculation of A, continuous absence, B, cumulative absence within any rolling period, and C, the trigger date, shall be reset so as to run from the first day of absence attributable to the later condition. 3. Any absence attributable to the earlier condition shall not be taken into account in calculating periods referred to in subsection 2. 4. For the purposes of this section, whether two conditions are clinically unrelated, shall be determined by FAPLT on the basis of medical evidence, which may include a medical assessment or OHP report. 5. For the avoidance of doubt, only one reset shall be possible, and intermittent or recurring symptoms of the same or a related underlying condition shall not constitute a new unrelated condition for the purposes of this section. 6. Where a minister is absent for a total of more than 600 days in any rolling 3-year period, whether or not trigger dates have been reached and whether or not the process has occurred to any extent under Section 7 or 8 of this Act, but the Minister is still inducted to the charge, the Presbytery, after consulting with the Ill Health Committee and the Minister's congregation, may decide to sever the pastoral tie at any time thereafter. The provisions of Section 9 as to overall stipend payment shall apply, and the Minister may remain in the manse for a further period of up to 3 months after the tie is severed under the General Trustee's standard conditions for occupation of a manse on a caretaker basis. If this happens, the Minister shall be responsible for any payments due to HMRC in respect of his or her occupation of the manse, other than national insurance contributions due, payment of which shall be made by the Presbytery.
Okay, so that's clearly accepted because it's been moved in the name of the committee. Is the General Assembly happy to accept this amendment? And online. Now, there's another amendment.
Yes. This one's shorter.
Can we see it on the screen, please?
Please. Thank you. This is to amend Section 3 by adding at the end, subject to amending the Act by deleting the existing Section 9.4 and substituting the following wording. Save as specified in Section 9.3 and subject to the discretion of FAPLT, after appropriate consultation, no minister shall be entitled to receive in any rolling 22-month period overall payments equivalent to stipend during periods of absence of more than full rate for 6 months, half rate for 6 months, and 1/3 rate for 3 months. Moderated, simple explanation to this is this was originally a 3-year period rather than 22 months, and after consultation, we'd like to propose that this is reduced back to the 2019 level, which we felt was a more sustainable and more palatable option. Thank you, Moderator.
So this is accepted by the committee. Is this amendment accepted by the General Assembly? Dr Browning.
This is a general, Derek Browning, number 4. This is a general comment on how this debate is being managed here. This committee has brought successive amendments to their own work to this General Assembly. And whatever the rights and the wrongs are of what is being proposed, this is no way to treat the General Assembly. And I am frankly astonished at the number of amendments that have been brought, one after another. Sometimes, yes, I know it's technical things. Sometimes I know it has simply to do with reordering numbering. But these are substantive matters which surely should have been part of the consideration of FAPLT before coming to the General Assembly. There's nothing we can do about it here, but I want to register deep unhappiness that we are being treated in this way, with a timetable that we're being pushed towards having to move towards simply because we're running out of time, and yet time after time, FAPLT have yet again brought these endless amendments. We cannot go on, and I would hope that FAPLT will hear that this will not be acceptable to any future General Assembly. Thank you, Moderator.
We've got Alec Shuttleworth, but before Alec, I want to say to Dr Browning, please be assured that the team at the table here have heard your comment, and that will be reflected in work and reports to assemblies going forward. Thank you for your comment. Alec?
Moderator, this was exactly the point I made before the whole debate started. There is something, and Dr Browning knows this, that we can do about it. We can depart this business and allow it to come to a Commission of Assembly at some early date. I am very unhappy about having to administer this as a presbytery clerk on the basis of what we're forcing through here. We are not reviewing this legislation. I am tempted, I have not done it yet, but I am tempted to move that we depart this business.
I'm going to have to ask you to make up your mind on your temptation.
Yielding is sin. I'm just going to look across at my friend Dr Browning.
We can't do anything with your comment. If you want to test the Assembly, you have to move that we depart from business.
Derek Browning number 4. I'm afraid I am Derek Browning number 4. But I fear the time for temptation and sin has probably passed, Moderator. I think we've already passed quite substantial parts of this matter, and I don't know that it would be helpful to depart from the matter at this stage, Moderator. Therefore, if it helps Mr Shuttleworth not to go down the valley of sin, then I would suggest that the moment has passed for doing that. Regrettably, I wish we'd maybe thought about it earlier, because certainly I would agree with him that we are not giving the significant legislation the due consideration that it truly merits. Thank you, Moderator.
Alec?
Yes, I'm always reassured by Dr Browning and always disagree with him, so I move that we depart this business.
Okay, thank you. Is that seconded? Right. Right, 1 minute. And I do. Right, okay, I think where we are is we're going to have a vote on the motion proposed by Mr Shuttleworth that we depart from this. We think that's pretty straightforward, and we've heard the convener at some length on this matter, commending it to the Assembly. Okay, and you could be part of this conversation. No, but they want 2 minutes. Stand up while you stretch your legs, but you've only got 2 minutes to do it. Call the General Assembly to order. The result of our conversation is that the Vice-Convener has a brief right of reply to this motion to depart, after which the Principal Clerk will explain to the General Assembly what the motion to depart means. Vice-Convener.
Thank you, Moderator. Jonathan Fleming, 114. Moderator, all I wish to say is that despite a very lengthy consultation process about the Ill Health Act, including a webinar, opportunity for feedback to be received, it was only in the days leading up to the General Assembly that some major concerns were raised by members of the General Assembly, commissioners of the General Assembly, which we reflected upon and discussed. And in respect to those commissioners and to try and demonstrate we are listening and responding when we're spoken to, this is why we have brought the proposals before you. It has not been with any intention of sneaking things under the radar or pushing things through. That is not how I can speak for my colleagues here and myself. It is not how we operate and never will. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you, Vice-Convener. We're going to vote. No, the Principal Clerk's going to advise us.
Advice on the implications of departing should we decide to do so. The suggestion has been made that this be taken to a Commission of Assembly. For the avoidance of doubt, a Commission of Assembly does not have the power to legislate. So if we depart, this would not go to a Commission of Assembly, it would go to the next General Assembly, and the Assembly should be clear that that is the implication of their vote.
Thank you, Principal Clerk. The Vice-Convener is going to explain to us how we vote.
Thank you, Moderator. On the hub, the motion is to depart from the matter, and you will have the buttons for or against. In the hall, the buttons will be...
Thank you. No. Unless it's a point of order. Well, it needs to be very clearly a point of order.
Can I, Reddick 155, can I just understand what we're departing from? Are we
Correct.
departing from the whole of the rest of the FAPOL report or just this one deliverance?
No. Principal Clerk will clarify for us what the motion to depart means we're departing from. Principal Clerk.
For the avoidance of doubt, what we are departing from is consideration of Deliverance 23 past the Ill Health and Income Protection Act as set out, etc., etc.
That clear? Please, Vice-Convener.
Right, I think we need to go back to the beginning there. On the hub, you have buttons for or against. In the hall, the button 1 is for departing, button 2 is for do not depart. So now the vote is open. The vote is now closed.
There voted to depart 103. There voted not to depart 79. The Assembly has agreed to depart from Section 23 of the FAPOT deliverance. We move then to Section 24. There's a new Section 24 in the name of Bryce Calder. Bryce, I hope you can hear me. I'm looking at this new number 24. I think in the light of our departing from Section 23, this would fall. Would the General Assembly agree with that? Thank you for sending that in, but we're back to number 24 in the print. A question from Julie Moody. Needs to be a very brief question. Online, Julie? We could go to Stephen Henderson. Stephen?
Moderator, Stephen Henderson, 117, ordained local minister, interim moderator, locum minister and acting clerk for Clyde Presbytery for the next 2 weeks. I've noticed from the report, section 53.1 of the report encourages presbyteries to be mindful of their responsibility in reviewing OLM appointments, particularly as their engagement as locums reduces in line with implementation of presbytery mission planning. However, section 45.1 of the report says there's a widening gap between stipendiary ministers and number of charges. As the Assembly will know, OLMs work in a non-stipendiary manner, either as volunteer ministers working 10 hours, let's face it, and the rest, plus a Sunday, or indeed, like myself, as locums. The demands on many of us are working beyond what was originally envisaged in Act 9, 2011, the Ordained Local Ministry Act. As part of the review in the roles of all ministries, I hope that FAPOT will look at Act 9, 2011 and how OLMs could be deployed and even potentially remunerated for the service that they give. Thank you.
Happy to give that undertaking? Yes, happy to give that undertaking. Have we got Julie yet? Julie? Right, I think we're going to need to move on. Section 24 in the print. That approved? Yes, and online. Section 25. Section 26. I've got 2 questions and a comment here. Can I plead with folks to check if your questions and your comments are absolutely essential at this time? We've got Ian Taylor, who I see is there, and Mike Goss, and then Robert Fowley.
Moderator, Ian Taylor, 158. The question is, I see that regulations regarding a pulpit supply are being repealed without comment in the body of the text or an alternative given. Can I ask the question, why, and what does this mean for those of us who in the coming weeks might be trying to book pulpit supply? Does that mean people are no longer to be played, or what's happening?
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and to the others who have also asked the same question. It's just to give assurance that the expenses or the payment rates are reflected on and will be continue to be reported on now from within the FAPOT report itself. If you look in it's alongside the normal reporting of stipend and other allowances. And this allows for more flexibility than in a regulation, and it reflects the fact too that more people are likely to read the FAPOT report than they have searched for an obscure regulation. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Mike?
Withdraw.
Okay. Robert?
Fowley, number 308. I thank the Vice-Convener for the response which I received as well to an earlier email. I'm not convinced by the word flexibility. I think congregations need certainty, as I do think people who fill pulpits require the certainty that the regulation gives. I think what FAPOT should continue to do is bring recommendations to the level of remuneration and not in the way that they've tried to do it this time. So I would oppose repealing Regulation 7 of 2008.
Okay. We're going to have to vote. Convener, do you need to respond to that? So the Vice Convener is going to tell us how to vote for or against Section 26.
So it's simple, for or against Section 26. On the hub, your buttons will be for and against. In the hall, yes, button 1 if you're for Section 26, button 2 if you are against Section 26, and the vote is open now. The vote is now closed.
Right. It's getting to that time that I've forgotten what for and against means. For means for the motion in the print, 74, and against 78. So it falls. Okay. So we're now at 27. Is that approved? 28. Is that approved? 29, is that approved? And we have a new number 30, Stella.
Thank you, Moderator. Stella McBurney, 311. Insert a new section 30, instruct the Faith Action Programme Leadership Team to consider bringing the Guardianship allowance in line with the standard vacancy allowance and report to the General Assembly of 2027. I have arranged a seconder and I believe the committee are willing to accept.
Thank you. I understand the committee are willing to accept. Is the General Assembly willing to accept new number 30? The deliverance as a whole and online. Convener, Tommy, once again, on behalf of the General Assembly and the Church, we want to say thank you to yourself, to all your Vice Conveners, the staff team and all the other members of FAPOT for the huge amount of work reflected in your report. Perhaps just now I want to say that whether a section of a deliverance is carried or not carried does not reflect on our appreciation of your work and the huge amount of effort that is put into what you have helped the General Assembly think about. Our prayer is that your offering to us in your report will be used by God to build his church and take forward his mission as we seek to walk in his ways. Thank you to you all. Thank you.